Hey everybody, this is our next frequently asked question video, and I wanted to dive into something that's a really often talked about aspect of inequitable education funding in Pennsylvania, and that is the racial inequities that are currently present. So I'm going to start on this chart here. It's where we ended our last video. If you are curious to learn more about what the fair funding formula is, it's kind of the basis for what we're talking about. So don't jump right into this one. Watch the other one first is my recommendation. But so here we go. So what we have on this chart, and I'm going to mention right from the get-go, the man who put together all of the data I'm going to be showing you today is David Mozenkis from Power Interfaith, who's done a phenomenal job demonstrating the racial inequities that are in the current funding. And so, many thanks to him for giving us this information in such a usable way. So here we have on the y-axis, we have the per student funding for the 2019-2020 school year. That is what students actually got per student. And on the x-axis down here, we have what they would have gotten if all of the funding, all the basic education funding was run through the formula. And what David did was he took each school district, regardless of size, each school district got a dot. And what he did was he placed them wherever their district belonged on this chart. So here you have a district who's getting $8,000 per student and should be getting, I don't know, maybe right around $1,000 per student. So getting vastly more than their fair share. Over here you have a district who's getting, $4,000 per student or a little under, and they should probably be getting about $6,000 per student. So what we see here and what we're able to observe is that many districts are getting more or less than their fair share would indicate that they should. But the racial part is what is also demonstrated here. David took the 500 or so school districts in the state and he shaded them. He broke them into two groups. So you have your 250 most white districts and your 250 least white districts. And what we can see when we look at that is that overwhelmingly, if you are one of the more white districts, you are getting more than your fair share. It does not mean that you are getting more than you feel you could use. You're getting a bigger portion than of what's available than the formula would say you should. So I don't want to indicate that anybody feels like they're swimming in cash. There might be some school districts that are, but in general, I'm not talking about what money you could put to good use. I'm talking about your equitable portion of the funding that has been made available. So we can see, though, that of the least white districts, most of them are under the line. The vast majority of districts who are under this line are more racially diverse school districts. Okay, so right off the bat, you see that this doesn't have random effects, racially speaking. It has disproportionately racially inequitable effects. Okay, next chart. So here, this is really where it gets even more interesting to me. What David did was he took each school district, and in this case, he also sized them. So here, you'll notice right off the bat, we have Philadelphia. Philadelphia is by far the biggest school district in terms of number of students in the Commonwealth. And we have school districts that are very small, very small. And each one of these school districts should be getting money based on the needs of their community and students. But what David did was he sized them and he divided them into 5 different quintiles in terms of the whitest districts to the least white districts. So these purple districts over here are the whitest districts, and the blue over here are the least white districts, and everyone in between. And each quintile has an equal number of students. That's important to understand. And so what you can see is that, again, the effect is not racially equitable. Even when you divide it out small into more distinct groups, quintiles, instead of just half, you can see that the effect is has a much greater harm on districts with more students of color than districts that are whiter. And here, this is when he put all the students in each quintile into kind of the same bucket and didn't treat them as individual school districts, but laid it out as more of averages. And we can see a clear trend across all the way. It's not random up and down, up and down. The less white you are, the more likely you are to be greatly shortchanged. And the more white you are, the more likelihood you are to be getting more than your equitable share. And this is another way of showing it in bar charts instead of in the dots as before. And down here, he shows you the percentage in each quintile. So our most inequitably funded districts are those that have between 2 and 30% white students. And up here, you have 91 to 99% white students. And on average, what these folks are getting more, these folks are getting less, again, per student. This is an interesting chart as well. What we have here is, instead of talking about race, because some people will say, well, this is an effect of poverty and try to go down that route with it. But what we can actually see here is that the clear trend that we saw before of the less white, the most inequitable funding, we don't see here. We actually see that the wealthiest districts are getting around their fair share. These districts in the middle tend to be the ones getting more than their fair share per student. And it's only the very poorest districts that are being really grossly underfunded. So this is a problem. It's a problem when our most under-resourced communities are the ones who are being shortchanged, because this doesn't just have effects on immediate conditions. I mean, the long-term effects on students here are incredible. These districts are going to be less likely to have AP courses. They're going to be less likely to have guidance counselors, bigger class sizes, and I could go on and on. But it also has an effect on the community. These communities are forced to raise taxes more, which burdens the local economy. It burdens individual families and businesses. It has such far-reaching effects that this isn't just about education, and education itself is huge and has far-reaching effects. This is also about the local economics and opportunity that a community has to thrive. Okay, so this is going to be the last one for today. This chart's really interesting. So this page here on the left, these are all districts that are getting less than their fair share, and these are getting more than their fair share. The boxes are sized based on the amount that a district is shortchanged. The boxes are shaded based on their racial makeup. The whitest boxes are the whitest districts, and so forth. So what we see here is that on the more than their fair share, again, you see a lot of white boxes. Pittsburgh is also getting more than their fair share, and there's a few complicated reasons for that. But it's worth remembering that in general, districts that are getting more than their fair share are probably districts that have been shrinking in terms of student population over time. And that's how Hold Harmless has benefited them in the formula. And over here, we have districts getting less than their fair share. We have Pittsburgh or Philadelphia right here. We have Reading, Allentown, and so forth. The chart itself is a little blurry, I apologize, but you can see a clear trend. Just back up and look at what you're seeing and see how much the districts with a lot of students of color are being harmed by this. And I don't think anybody is actually okay with this. I don't think anybody's sitting there saying, well, no big deal. What happens is folks just say it's too hard to fix this. But the reality is we can't do that anymore. We can't say it's too hard. We can't say, wait, it's been too long. We cannot keep doing that. We've gotten to the point where equity is no longer optional. It has to be fixed. And I don't know how anyone can look at this chart and give up. We can't give up on it. So I think that's it for today. I'm going to say one more thing too. It's worth noting that no one is accusing legislators of sitting in some back room plotting ways to harm communities of color. This doesn't happen often because of intentional harm. It happens because of a mix of political expedience and apathy and systems protecting those who have power. And so it needs to be understood that while no one is accusing legislators of doing this on purpose, they are, as a group, allowing this to continue, knowing this is happening. David gave this testimony regarding the racial bias in the education funding back during the Basic Education Funding Commission I think it was about 5 years ago now. And he demonstrated to the lawmakers that the racial bias was present in the way they were funding schools. And when they decided to adopt the fair funding formula, but keep hold harmless and only let new money be distributed equitably, they were allowing this to continue with the knowledge that it was racially biased. And so it's a mess is what it is. And so understood that nobody did this on purpose, but turning a blind eye to racial injustice doesn't make it okay just because it wasn't, your intent to be racist or whatever you want to say. So I'll stop now. But if anybody has questions, reach out. This is a really big deal. It's a really big deal if we're going to say things like Black Lives Matter or Black Students Matter, that we actually treat communities of color and students of color with equity. Thank you all and have a good day.